What's up, Redemption? How you doing? John Hendricks here, as always, for a new episode of the Threshing Floor podcast. On this episode, we're bringing back an old guest. We're bringing back Jayden Alstad. Joining us here on the episode, we're going to be talking about teams and what that format entails so that you have kind of a primer for what to expect if you want to play that at Nationals or play it in one of the side events. And so we've got that. We've got spoilers. We've got some other news and content that's come out in the previous week, plus some tournament results. So we'll jump right into it. Thanks for being here. All right, guys, thanks for joining for another episode of the Threshing Floor podcast. This is number 37. And on this week's episode, we've got an old friend. It's been a while. How you doing, Jayden?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing fantastic. Up against the gun here to get this recorded for you guys out there. So don't fuss at me too much tomorrow when this releases. I just got done with baseball, rushed to the warehouse to my office. Jayden was kind enough to hang out and join me here late to try to get an episode in. So just letting you guys know that we are up against the gun to get this recorded. So we're doing it. Everything that we do is for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
That's straight from the heart. Don't you feel that, Jayden? All the emotion in here.
Yeah, but I will say that I'm planning on fussing a lot, so just be ready.
All right. Well, as long as you don't fuss at me about the YouTube version, that gets like 4 views a week.
I'll probably fuss at you for the Spotify version because that's what I've started listening on. So Podbean. Yeah.
Well, does it go on to Spotify pretty quickly when it's updated?
I think so. Last week I was it wasn't like right away because I got the like Podbean notification and then I went to go check Spotify and it wasn't there, and then by the time that it probably was there, I was already going home from work, so I didn't listen to it until the next day. Felt a little behind.
When I first started, I know that the way that I do it is through Apple because, I have, the best phone, not an Android. I have an Apple device. So I use Apple Podcast. And when I first started, as soon as I put it on there, it was immediately available on Apple. And now I've noticed there's like a 10 to 15 minute delay. So I don't know if that's something intentional from Podbean to try to get you to use their service to get it up to the minute or what. But I would just like to state for the record, I think all of that is beyond my control. I just send it to Podbean and they do their thing. So,
yeah, I got to figure out how to. I'm sure there's a way to get notifications from Spotify when it comes up, but I still get the notifications from Podbean, and then I got to figure out how to do it on Spotify so that I don't get both, and then I can not have Podbean send me notifications so that I actually get the notification when it's available to me when I, on my preferred platform.
Did you know in other cool news about the podcast and Podbean, because Podbean does do these statistics for the podcast. So on the dashboard here, I am going just to double check to make sure I don't lie to you.
Wouldn't be the first time.
We are 3 downloads away, and this does not count YouTube. This just counts Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, those places that are keyed in with the RSS feed for the podcast. We are 3 streams, downloads, listens away from hitting 3,000 for the life of the podcast. Wow. So hopefully.
Well, I bet by the time that people are hearing this, at least, the first or the after the first 3 people, then we'll be past that.
Yeah, because one of those will be me because I always proof it. As soon as, I try to post it and then listen to it before. That way, if there's any issues with the upload or whatnot. But anyway, we'll get off of that. We'll move on. I will say in life update, if anyone is wondering about baseball, I told you this, Jayden, before we started recording, but we played tonight in a win or go home game, and we were supposed to go home, guys. We were supposed to be done with baseball, but we ended up coming in 3rd place for our district, and they were only taking 2 from each district to the state tournament that is starting on July 8th. All right. They threw us a caveat after we lost And I thought, well, at least baseball's over and now I can start to, have some free time from that to where I can focus a little bit more on more fun things for me, like redemption and getting a deck put together for tournaments leading up to nationals, because I still have no idea what I'm going to play. I know, John, don't build it the night before, but it's looking like I might have to. But anyway, they let us know that since we play in the toughest division or toughest district in the state, they're taking 3 teams. And we came in third. So, yay, we're going to state.
So it was a win or go home game that you didn't win, but you also did go home.
Right. Well, we went home for a time, but we're coming back.
Right.
So we got that. Also, in completely just out of nowhere news, you guys know that I've used a couple of fishing analogies here. Today is a sad day for me personally. So, if you want to share some pick-me-up type of words once this podcast drops. I sold my boat today, my bass boat.
What?
I sold the boat because my wife's been working on me to potentially get a pontoon boat. And the reason is, well, we've got family that could, join us on the water. Then she would go out on the water, my son would go, and it wouldn't just be an enjoyment for me and a buddy. It would be an enjoyment for the family. And just after a while, I just ran out of excuses to be like, yeah, you know what? I think I should keep the bass boat. So I sold the boat, made a significant amount of money above what I paid for it a year ago when I purchased it, and I got all the use of a year. So there's that. So
seems good.
I just want to let everyone know that included in that extra money is all the money that I'm going to need for nationals. So no worries there. I'm going to be at nationals now, guys. I can afford to make it. All right.
You're going to drive the boat there?
I would have to steal the boat now, though, because I no longer own it.
Well, you got to get the pontoon boat.
Oh, the pontoon boat. Yeah. I don't know if I'll have one by the time nationals comes around.
Because remember, I'm showing up on a boat too. If you remember my GIF.
Yeah.
In my Viking garb.
Yeah. I don't honestly recall that, but
no, it was in spoiler alert channel, I think, which is completely off topic from spoilers, but
well, in the whole, getting ready to move warehouses for work, baseball thing for the kid, and all of the stuff for the podcast, and also redoing like our backyard at the house. I feel like I'm spread. I'm a big guy, so I guess I'm spread pretty far, and I guess it's good that I'm elastic or whatever, So, but hopefully I can start to focus more on the podcast and kind of bring you guys not rushed episodes in the near future. So with that, we'll just go right into our recent news. You guys have come accustomed to this, and first up is our boy Jayden, who is on the podcast. So do you want to talk about your videos that came out this week?
Oh, I suppose I could do that. Let's see. I had 2 games, both on Thursday. One of them was a pre-recorded video, which was round 2 of the Lackey Grand Prix that's currently going on. And that was versus against Rob Smith. I used Peaceful Patriarchs is what I called the deck. It's basically just using the peace. I don't really want to call it a combo because it's not really a combo, but because it's just one card. But it's kind of the revelation that people had about using peace with banding or peace on banding characters and how it still tosses, and putting that into the Patriarchs shell. It was actually a deck that Jared, or aka him, had been put together, like most of it, or I'm not sure if he actually posted a list with Patriarchs and Peace, or at least I think he had Peace in the deck, but it wasn't like a central focus. Like he had other game plans as well, and I pretty much didn't. I was like going all in on that, and so that was the game against Rob. And then that evening, I also live streamed the round 3 game with Emmanuel, and I used pretty much the same deck, but I put a little bit of Rossetti in there, and Added a new beginning, added a couple of, well, I think Noah was already in the first version. Added another Flood Survivor, and then also Three Nails, and that was a pretty fun game. I definitely learned some things about how to improve the deck, but definitely enjoyed playing it, and I don't know, might try it out for certain tournament coming up this weekend. I don't know, we'll see.
I tell you what, man, I just want to, if you're listening to the podcast and you went to build Patriarchs, because I feel like that's one of the natural things, because you get Cloud of Witness Abraham possibly that's 12-12. You get Jacob that's 10-10. You get Meek Judah. I think he's like 11-10 or something like that. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lot of big body heroes that you can put peace on. I just want to know how many people came up with the name that went into Lackey, started building a deck and titled it Peaceful Patriarchs. Because I did, you did, and I know there's at least one other person out there in the Redemption community, because it was just too easy. It's like it named itself.
Well, see, I was trying to think of what I wanted to put in there, and actually in Lackey, I think I just called it Pat's Peace, and I thought about the name just doing like, oh, Peaceful Patriarchy, and I was like, ooh, yeah, that probably wouldn't come across super well. So I went with Peaceful Patriarchs. I think that's a good spot for it.
I will say I watched both of those because I was interested in this, and when I saw the title, I was like, I'm going to watch that because, yes. And then you did Rossetti with it, and I was thinking the whole time with Patriarchs, I was like, I'm at least going to put 3 nails in here.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't sure if I was going to, dedicate the dominant slot to doing the other one, but I was like, yeah, because if they come out and they get an answer for something, you can at least, all right, wipe it all and start over just to give. Because I feel like Patriarchs are a good shell, but they don't have that. It feels like they're always missing just a punch, like whether that's mid-game or late game. Like you can set up, get that first rescue or two, and then it's like, okay, now they've got answers to your stuff, and it's, I don't know. And I guess Peace helps give them another tool, but then adding the reset I thought was cool. But if I did the reset, I would put some Soul Gen in there because, buddy, you might need some Soul Gen. How unlucky was it that you reset twice? And then you were, at one point you were like, because you had put a new beginning into your discard pile and you had Second Coming and he had gotten rid of your Son of God, and you're like, yeah, I could, oh wait, this is supposed to be removed. And you were thinking about going for a third reset. And Emmanuel was just hitting you with no souls, no souls.
And I played Mayhem too, so that was kind of like a third reset. But yeah, that definitely an oversight on my part. That was kind of what I was hinting at with the that's one thing that I would definitely change in the deck.
I would say that deck is highly combustible. It's either going to blow up your opponent's game plan or it's going to blow up your own idea of what you're going to do.
And it's also going to get your Son of God banished because you can't play it during battle when your opponent grabs Confusion from their reserve.
Yeah. That is key too. So you lost your Son of God and you had the best run of Soul Drought I've ever seen anyone have was Emmanuel in that game, off of multiple resets. And then like just off his top deck, he's like, all right, I'm going to draw 3, no souls. I'm going to draw 3, no souls. And it was just, You couldn't catch a break.
And here it all comes back to the Lackey Shuffler. You know, he underdecked a lot of lost souls in that game. And then after all of the shuffling, still didn't draw him.
But Josh says that we can't give credence to the our credibility to the Lackey Ghost.
I don't know. I'm going to do it when it's convenient for me, though.
Although Tyler said that you should get some custom sleeves made that say, I would have won if Lackey shuffled. It'd be pretty cool.
Yep.
But I did build a deck in Lackey last week, and I was like, I'm going to drop Exiles in here. And wouldn't you know, the first time I did the test, the first 3 opening hands, I had Exiles in the opening hand.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the lightest cards in Lackey. Like, the file size for the image is just barely smaller than the rest of them. And so when you shuffle, it naturally just floats to the top.
That's what it is. Got it.
Yeah, I'm a computer engineering guy here, so.
So, speaking of our friend Tyler Stevens, he has a video out that came out, I think it was shortly after me and Jay recorded, but we recorded a couple of days before it came out. So it's been out for a little bit now, but we're still going to spotlight it here. Ghosties, but not. From what I've seen in Discord and from the little bit I looked at the video, I didn't watch the full video. I didn't have time, and I haven't circled back to it.
Shame on you.
Well, the only reason I made it yours a priority was it was a deck I was currently working on trying to build. But post-exilics with Gospel Gold, I believe, is what Ghosties are.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm not sure what the main purpose is other than getting to use some of the manipulating their hand with the gold stuff that you can use from Gospel of Christ Phase 1, mixing that with kind of the backbone of what post-exilics does that came out in LOC. But that video is definitely on the to-do list. I will watch more than 3 minutes of it, Tyler. Don't worry. So, have you watched that video yet?
It's too late. We're already 3 minutes past the podcast, or into the podcast, so Tyler's not listening anymore.
Oh, well.
I was going to pretend that I had watched the video, but I don't know that I could fake it well enough. I have not watched it yet either. But I do think the idea is to basically get like the best part of posties, kind of a little bit of the hand control, and then combine it with some of the best parts of Gospel Gold, which is largely like Jairus and Jairus' daughter. But I think maybe a little bit of Watchful Servant kind of stuff, get some drawing or banding, and getting some of the other hand controlled stuff in there, like teaching in parables, which that goes in post exilics regardless, but just kind of finding a good blend that's all in the same brigade.
I guess that makes sense. So that brings us to our other video source for Redemption. That is Rob M Studios from Rob M in New York. And live from New York, you have a Zoom Discord Invitational game versus, guess who? He's back again. We've been talking about Emmanuel a lot because when I give out tournament standings, if he plays, he's winning something or placing in something. And then You had a game versus him in your video that you live streamed on Thursday. And he was also in the Rob M video this past week. So Emmanuel is he's playing everyone. He is getting well seasoned for Nationals. Hopefully he's coming to Nationals.
I definitely will not be, or I would be surprised if he wasn't going to be at Nationals. And I am not surprised whenever I see him, or hear him doing well up there, because definitely been kind of working on Daniel forever and kind of getting to the point where it's like, okay, if Emmanuel's playing, if he's playing Daniel, then he's going to do well, because that's just like, it's the deck that he knows like the back of his hand, and he's always trying new stuff, and I think it's been working out well for him.
Yeah. So with that, we will mention that the Lackey Grand Prix has round 4 pairings that went live. So we're recording this late Monday night. And so pairings went up for round 4 today. I believe it's round 4. Is that right? Yes. Because you played round 3 versus Emmanuel. So round 4. And then the Zoom Invitational Series 3 is done. I believe he's had signups for Series 4, and that's getting ready to start at some point. I think he was working on getting the time based on what works best for the participants. I think he wanted to avoid the 4th of July week if possible. But the final standings for the Zoom Invitational Series 3 is our friend Derek Torado, former Your Turn Games owner, goes by the screen name of Watchman. Then guess who in second? Emmanuel.
Oh,
and then in third, Brandon Swango, I believe is the last name, but he goes by B Swan on Discord. So that's your top 3. Watchman, Emmanuel, or E-Man, and then B Swan. All right, so that's going to bring us to, those were the unofficial tournaments that are happening. And again, they're helping shape, what the meta is and what decks are, rising to the top and whatnot. But where we really tell that is when people get competitive and play in the state and regional tournaments. And last week we told you about a couple of tournaments. Jay mentioned his Midwest region tournament, and then we had the Maryland State tournament. So we've got results from both of those that the host chose to share with us. So Maryland State tournament, we've got type 1. Dave Smith came in first. Rob Smith came in second. And Charles Johnson came in third. In type 2, Rob M. came in first. Sean Wenzel came in second. And Charles Johnson came in third. In booster, Rob M. came in first. Rob Smith in second. And Charles Johnson in third. I'll tell you what, our buddy Charles Johnson just couldn't break out of the third place slot here. He was the first 3 categories, he got third. But, hey, at least you're placing, huh?
Yeah, I mean, like third 3 times, that's basically first, right?
Yeah, it adds up to, I guess, I don't know. Don't ask me to do math, man. In sealed deck, Sean Wenzel came in first, Rob M. in second, and Amanda Johnson in third.
There we go. Johnson's, maybe it's just the last name kind of thing.
Dave Smith and Rob Smith came in first in teams. Amanda Johnson and Charles Johnson came in second. And then Rob M. and Sissy M. of Cat Incorporated, he mentioned, came in third for teams. I guess that's maybe a YouTube channel. I'm sorry, Rob. I said it, but I don't know what it means. But anyway.
Is that maybe, I think she maybe been on as an assistant once or twice on Rob's channel?
Maybe. Don't ask me questions I don't have answers to. All right. So that'll move us to Jay's tournament. And Maryland State was hosted by our friend Rob M., who drove down to Maryland and hosted it there. The Midwest Regional Tournament was hosted by Jay Chambers. And I don't know if you saw the picture, but he provided his participant steak and steak and potato lunch. And I'm just wondering if his brother Jeremy, does that run in the family is what I'm trying to figure out. Is Jeremy going to be grilling up some steaks? So if you're hearing this, Jeremy, are you going to be grilling up steaks, man? Because I could deal with that.
I think he said yes. Yeah, I think I heard him.
All right. Everybody heard him right there. All right. So in type 1 for the Midwest Regional Tournament, Luke Marshall came in first. Jay Chambers came in second. And Josh Portraz came in third. And he was the special guest that was traveling up to join them.
I just noticed this now. I didn't notice when you sent it earlier. But there's only one R. We figured this out. And I'm going to be on the record confidently saying that it's just Josh Potratz. So there's only the second R is the real one.
Okay.
The first one is silent.
I thought that had been established as well, that it wasn't Portratz. It was, how did you say it again? Potratz?
Potratz, yeah.
Okay.
Or like, it's spelled like pot rats with a Z.
Okay. I thought that was accurate because when he sent in his deck list after Nationals last year, it was spelled differently than what I had seen it spelled. But Jay provided me this. So, Jay, like, come on, man. So
yeah, he's got it easy. He's got a 3-letter first name, and then his last name is basically just an English word. So
yeah. Well, so anyway, so Josh P. Hey, Josh P. He got third. Go. Type 2 was Jay Chambers, and then Luke Marshall in second, and Caden, our favorite crab burrito, came in third.
Never had one before, but it does sound interesting.
I mean, I guess. Depends on where you get it from. If Taco Bell ever offers that in a burrito, I wouldn't take it.
That's fair. I wouldn't blame you.
Then that's going to bring us to Booster, and Jay Chambers got first place there. Luke Marshall got second, and Caden got third again.
Maybe they just did Booster and Type 2 at the same time. They just drafted Type 2 decks.
Oh, maybe. But in sealed, Luke Marshall won. Josh P. came in second, and Ron Sias making an appearance here, coming in third for sealed deck.
There we go.
In teams, Josh P. paired up with Caden, Mr. Crab Burrito himself, came in first place. That's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
And then Luke Marshall paired with Ron Sias and came in second. That's also cool to see. And then Jay came in third with his wife, Alexis Chambers.
I just got to say now, though, I don't think Josh is a huge fan of teams. I could be wrong about that. But he has now won both a state and a regional tournament in teams with different teammates. So that's he's definitely going to be in the running for RRS.
So he's following the blueprint for John Early. Win with a different partner at every chance you get.
There you go. Maybe that's who. Maybe he and John will pair up this year.
I don't. We should have circled back to that at some point by now. Who ended up getting the spot that was up for grabs for? I mean, to date, probably the only person that sent in a resume or application directly is Ron. So I guess we'll have to see.
As far as we know, anyway.
All right. So that's going to bring us to upcoming tournaments. And this coming weekend, we have the Southeast Regional Tournament hosted by my buddy, the best Chambers, Jeremy Chambers. And I guess that's going to depend on if we get those stakes or not. Jeremy, it's all on the line, man. Jay's coming for your title. All right, so that's going to be July 1st and 2nd, so Friday, Saturday, and it's going to be at the Chambers Farm Event Hall in Center, Alabama, a.k.a. Jeremy's crib.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not like a, just randomly named Chambers Farm. That's, their actual place.
Yeah, where if you go far enough in the back, you'll find some chickens.
Yep.
But we also have a state tournament that's coming up, and this is one that was postponed a while. It was supposed to happen a few weeks ago, got postponed, and it's coming up. And I guess we've just struck gold because 2 weeks in a row, I'm going to have someone that's going to attend that tournament, plug it. So here you go, Jayden. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we've got the Minnesota State tournament coming up on July 2nd, so this coming Saturday. That's going to be at Community of Grace Lutheran Church in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, hosted by my brother, Justin. And, I'll probably help out with the hosting a little bit there, too, the hosting duties, and my sister as well. It's her church that we are utilizing. And so, yeah, I think we're going to have a pretty good crew. I had the opportunity to teach someone brand new to the game just yesterday, now on Sunday. And so he seemed pretty interested. He picked up the game pretty quick, and he's planning to be there on Saturday. And then also met up with another guy who's getting back into the game, who is just a little bit west of the Twin Cities here. And he came on Sunday as well, and kind of we got to play and get a little bit back into it for him. So pretty excited to get some new faces in there.
And this, I think I saw it mentioned before, this is the first state tournament there in a couple of years, right?
Yeah, we didn't have one last year, and don't think we had one in 2020 either. So yeah, it's been a while.
Nice. It's nice to see, and I don't know how many were new versus like last year, whether you held a state tournament, but I don't think Maryland had one last year. I guess technically Alabama's not having one because someone was supposed to find a date and send in an application to host it, and they didn't do it.
Oh no.
I don't know who prioritized other things instead of doing that, but all right, fine. It was me, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
Unbelievable.
Life caught up to me.
I was planning to come too.
Were you? Well, I'm going to hold it to you next year. I'm going to pick a date, and you got to be there. I'll make you this deal. If you come to Alabama State, I'll come to Minnesota State next year.
Could maybe make that deal.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
I could probably make it too. My wife won't worry about coming because she's gonna be like, ugh, it's cold up there.
Hey, in the summer it's not too bad. In the summer it's usually too hot.
Yeah, well, in the summer down here, I hope you're welcome for the humidity. Like it's not the heat that you have to worry about; it's the humidity. It's like getting slapped with just 110% humidity.
Oh yeah. We got that here too.
Oh, okay.
Just like walking outside and you feel like you're in a pool.
So everyone, make sure you lock it up in stone. Jayden is coming to Alabama State. I'm gonna make sure that I schedule mine first, so that if you don't come, then I can be like, well, I got an out. I don't have to now.
What if we make it fair and do them on the same day?
I'm picking up what you're putting down, but I'm not really sure that technology is advanced enough to. I don't think you can be in two places at one time.
Oh, so I have to be at Minnesota State too. Okay, I suppose.
Oh, and just show up and show up. Hey, I'm here. I'm in Alabama. I'm sorry.
Just be a little swap,
I do want to. I tried to do it this year, but I didn't really get to do it because I wasn't able to make the Maryland State tournament. But I want to, like, each year pick an additional tournament and try to get to it, like a state or regionals, and just try to eventually broaden my little map of tournaments that I go to, which is kind of cool. My wife does like to travel, so I've got that going for me, except for the fact that she says redemption only happens in the boringest cities in the U.S. And when she Googled Iowa, it was not a fun conversation, guys. Like, she was like, why did they pick just the middle of nowhere? It's like Children of the Corn. I didn't even know she knew what Children of the Corn was.
It's all right though, because you'll be heard because there are lots of ears around. So
dad joke. Check me out in the dad joke channel.
Yeah, that one was a little corny. Sorry about that.
Oh man, it just gets better. All right, so we're going to tell you now that Nationals is 31 days away. 30 at the time of this release, and in 13 minutes it will be on Central Time the next day. So that's how late we're recording this. So
I'm almost there.
30 days away. We are inside of a month. So you've got 30 days to make your final plans, travel plans, arrangements to get to Nationals. You're going to want to be there. So much cool things we've talked about for it seems like the last 6 months. I mean, I guess close to that. I don't know when it was officially announced where it was happening and all of that, but it feels like we've had 6 months of build up at this point.
Yeah, it's got to be something like that, which isn't the most we've had, but I think it's kind of like it's not the longest we've had, but I feel like it's the most we've had because there's been like so much content and stuff, just like building up to it and more than in the past. But yeah. We should also mention that Roy recently put on the forums a rideshare thread. So go check that out if you're trying to figure out like how to get there, or like if you can carpool with somebody who might be driving through your state or something.
Yeah. So that is available on the boards. He put that out, and apparently that's kind of a staple thread that he does each year for Nationals. So
yep,
that's available. And with that, I guess we will kind of transition into the spoilers that have come out in the past week. And we get to double up on Israel's Deliverance spoilers. So I'll let you, if you want to, you can take the first two here, the heroes, and then I'll take the evil characters.
Sure. Yeah. So we got two fairly notable 1 Samuel characters, heroes here that are both pretty central in the story of David, or like, people that you've probably heard about. We've got Abigail. She's a purple 9/7 hero, queen of Israel and Judah, because she was the wife of David. And her ability is actually, it's fairly intriguing. You may choose an evil character to block. So this is something that we've seen in kind of more recently in the past few sets of just kind of a general or like more broad, like choosing any evil character to block. It used to be on like Ehud and Azahel, and like you can only choose male humans or just humans, and I guess we had just humans on Elijah, and now with the last set, and seems with Israel's Deliverance, we've got abilities that just let you to choose an evil character to block, which is not something I expected from the starter decks, but something I'm definitely excited about. Very playable card.
Well, now that you talk about it like that, and they are subject to change, now they're going to go back and change it to an evil human. Thanks, Jayden.
Oh shoot, yeah, yeah. It's actually it's a terrible card. Probably won't see any play outside of the starter decks, but there you can just edit the first part out, right?
Maybe not. We'll just leave it in there to kind of force the elders' hands.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. Now if they do it, it'll be like they'll just doing whatever you say, which it's a dangerous precedence to set. Next up here, we got Jonathan the Devoted. So David's best friend, the guy that he was like, closer than a brother with. He is a 10/9 purple hero. He is warrior class, and he is also royalty because he was the son of King Saul. His ability is may band to a purple 1 Samuel hero, or you may draw 2. So it's got a band ability, and it's got a draw ability. You can do one or the other, which I think people identified very quickly as a very Tyler ability.
Yes, except for I think Chris must have had influence over this because there's an or clause. Now, if it did both, that's definitely Tyler, but I think maybe cooler heads prevailed, and Chris was like, no, it's one or the other. That's how I imagine it went anyway.
That seems reasonable, yeah.
Before I go into the 2 evil characters here, I just want to point out, because as you were reading the identifiers, every time that I see the Israel's Deliverance, I think my favorite part of the change for the design for the card is the identifiers, having the thin gap between the art box and the text box, and then having the bubbled identifiers. I think it looks clean, and I don't know, makes it look like it pops a little bit more than previous, having it squeezed in there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The first time I saw kind of this format was actually when I first saw Pontius Pilate, and I was like, oh, this looks kind of weird. I'm not sure if I like it, but it's definitely grown on me.
Yeah. So the evil characters we have, we'll start with the Philistine Governors, and this is a 2/4 Mono Brigade black evil character that is warrior class. The identifiers are generic and Philistine. And it says, may band to a Philistine with strength 10 or greater, or you may draw 1. So again, we have the or clause, so you get to band to a Philistine with strength 10 or greater, or you may draw 1. Which, when I saw this, I thought about the fact, I don't know how much we've seen as far as like banding from the characters, collecting my thoughts from our memories from what we've seen without going back and explicitly looking at it. But I do remember the enhancement that we talked about on an episode with Brad, and it was like gathering the armies or something like that, to where you can band to 3 Philistines. Yep. And so it seems like you're going to be able to, within the starter deck, just make at some point a massive band of like at least 30 plus toughness, because this has got our strength. You've got 10 or greater banding here. So if this is one of the ones you band in off of that, then you could band to another with 10. You've got our other spoiler here for the evil side is King Achish. It's a reprint using the same artwork. I like that they're using the same artwork so that that's memorable to that guy.
Right, yep.
But this guy kind of ruins the plans if you're trying to do that, because he's King Achish and a Philistine king. His special ability is negate band abilities. So he's 11/10, and he's warrior class. But unfortunately, he negates band abilities. So,
Don't use him with the other guy.
yes. For the starter decks, I don't know how much use or how much you're going to be able to use him without being a solo guy. But then I start thinking about you could technically have a Philistine with, if you were to use this outside of the starter deck, just in the card pool, ban to Armor Bearer, and then exchange to Akish, and then it wouldn't undo the ban because then it would be an exchange coming in.
There you go.
So you have ways to get him in. Although I really like King Akish's original ability that is in rotation already. So I'm not sure that I would ever play this version over that, but it's kind of cool to see negate band abilities as an ability in the starter decks. Also, choosing evil characters to block. You've got band or draw so that you get to choose that on the other two cards here. So it's like there's a more scattered spread of ability types to give a good representation of what's available in the card pool.
Right.
I'm definitely digging that.
Yeah, I'm already like I haven't played any with the starter decks, and I'm pretty much at the same level everyone else is as far as like knowing what cards are in them. Like I helped proofread a few of them, but I'm really excited to get my hands on these and play with them, even just for like a starter deck level, because I feel like they have more variety than the previous starter decks, even though like the abilities aren't necessarily more complex.
Yeah, I feel like they're more engaging and they will hold the attention of someone that's wanting to learn to play the game.
Right.
Without having, I feel like you'd have to play them several times before they got boring from just seeing them pieced out, and obviously without playing them as well. But
yep.
That's what I think.
Especially with these fancy full art borders here too. It's not really full art, but full color.
I'm interested to see how those turn out. So that's going to take us to our first Phase 2 spoiler that I have here. And that is going to be Magnificent. And it is a white Mono Brigade good enhancement. 4/3 are the numbers. Its identifiers. I think
you're supposed to sing the information, John.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a song.
Trust me, you guys do not want that. The identifiers are involves music and nativity. It has a star ability to discard an evil card from a reserve. So that's one of those that you love to see that star ability, because if you get to do it, it's great, but it's another one that you don't want to see turn 1 with the new reserve rule. Mm-hmm. But the ability is, if used by a gospel hero, interrupt the battle. Reserve all evil characters in battle. Cannot be prevented if used by Mary, Holy Virgin. And the word from Gabe, I believe he was the one that answered this, is that they have to specify a character so that they know which characters or which cards from that character can be used with this. So it applies to all copies of cards that are of Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Right.
But they had to put a version on here, list it out explicitly so that it wouldn't just say Mary, because then you could do Mary of Bethany, Mary, anybody Mary. Mm-hmm. So since they specify a way to tell what character that is in the Bible, then only copies of that specific character can make this cannot be prevented if used by. So this is Magnificent, and I don't know, I could be completely wrong, but I feel like this is the first card that we've seen that has this 3D art element style to where it's going to actually touch a hair into the white border. Like the foot at the bottom that's behind the Cactus Game Design tag is actually sticking over the edge of the colored portion to where it will spill over just a hair into the white border. I think that's the first time we've seen that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I thought
I know that we have some
one
full
of the
art
angels
to wear.
did.
Maybe.
But yeah, it is cool. She's kind of dipping her toes into the white border at the bottom.
Yeah. So that is that card, and that's going to take us to the next one. You want to give that one a spin, Jayden?
Yeah, so we've got one that Joseph Roberts got to spoil, because he's been asking, like, I think it was like once a week at least. Are there any black cards in the set? Like, or are there going to be any new black cards to add to my defense? Because he's a notorious black defense player, Philistines, all that kind of stuff. Despite him asking in the Discord this past week about orange cards. So I don't know, maybe he's kind of venturing out, because we've got a black and orange evil character here named Afflicting Spirit. He got to spoil this one. It's a 4/2 generic demon. It's also a Canaanite, which is where the black comes from. Its ability is you may exchange a hero in battle with opponent's hero. After battle, you may place this card on a good card, negate that card, and paralyze it if it is a hero. So I think this is a very cool ability. It's not quite a it's effectively a choose the rescuer hero, or evil character. Choose the rescuer evil character, except if they're banding, then you don't kick out all of the heroes. You only exchange one of them. So it works slightly differently, but it is cool because you can, if they've got kind of a hero that will give you initiative in territory, then you can exchange them. And exchanging does not give special initiative because there is another hero in battle. And so at 4/2, this guy can get initiative pretty easily. And then after battle, say you have initiative, win the battle, then you can place it. As long as it survives the battle, you can place it on a good card, which it doesn't have to be a hero, but probably will often be a hero or maybe a good fortress. And it negates that card and paralyzes it if it is a hero. So it fits in with the place theme of orange that we've been seeing so far in GOC.
Yeah, I can't wait to see some of those orange cards and how they're going to. You mentioned the theme of placing cards, and it seems like there's so many that place themselves that it's like, how much is too much? Because right now you're seeing decks that are like pretty light on evil characters. You've got a certain amount, and then you've got 3 to 4 enhancements in your main deck, and then a couple in reserve. But it seems like there's just so many like good enhancements if you are going into that, to where maybe that's where that defense heavy deck comes in, and maybe it's orange. I don't know, because it seems like there's a lot of them you're going to want to run that are going to kind of flip the numbers of evil characters and enhancements that are in decks currently.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you do have to kind of weigh the options, I guess, because like orange, when kind of the place concept or whatever was kind of initially started in like priests, and there were some cards before then, but when orange came out, like that was kind of a theme, or like something that was maybe dipped into a little bit, but it just really didn't see much play because they don't normally win you the battle. And so having cards like this that can have some kind of impact on a battle and then place themselves, and we've seen a few others of those as well. I think Hate the Light, it has a battle winning component and then also places. And that was kind of one of the things that over play testing we kind of realized, like, we need to put some more effects into here that can impact the battle in order to have a good balance of place cards and battle cards, because otherwise the defense is just going to be all over the place, or by the time you get things placed, your opponent's already going to be at 4 lost souls, and you're going to be trying to catch up.
Yeah, that's understandable. Kind of a ebb and flow there with like how much is too much of just the territory interaction and punishment versus the battle aspect. So that will take us to Betraying Christ, and this is going to be a crimson and orange enhancement with the numbers of 1 and 5. And this ability says, name a hero. Discard all copies of the named hero. If Judas Iscariot is in play, discard all copies of the named hero from opponent's hand, deck, and reserve. So Judas, He betrayed Jesus. Now he gets to betray Matthew. So you get to name
much.
a hero and get rid of them. And right now, probably one of the heroes you would want to get rid of the most is Matthew. That's going to be just a speed engine for the opponent. But this is something that does have to be played in battle because it is not territory class. So this is going to be a card that I think sees some play, but I don't know how much, just because it doesn't interrupt the battle. You have to get initiative with it, and then you get to discard the hero. And if it happens to be the hero that's in battle, you're going to put the opponent in special initiative. So I think it's a cool concept. I don't know about how much play it sees right out of the gate.
Yeah, I think if anything, it's probably a reserve card, and then it's matches the two of the brigades on wages, so it fits in most decks that can use wages, and it's also a nice enhancement for Simon the Magician, who's kind of lacking with NT firepower at this point. So maybe he goes in a few decks there, but probably not too many right away.
Yeah. I will say it's kind of cool to see some like hard removal of heroes in rotation coming out with GOC Phase 2 here.
No,
so
for sure.
There is that. That's going to bring us to Plunderers. And as soon as I said something about Magnificent having the foot sticking over the border, Plunderers down here has just the tail of a torch sticking up that's going to spill over just a hair into the white border. So breaking news, John is wrong. So it's not the first time we've seen it. We've seen it here right under this card, literally the very next card under it. So we've got Plunderers, Crimson, Mono Brigade Evil character with 8 and 9 as the numbers. It's generic. It's a thief. And it says, if blocking, prevent the next good enhancement played in battle to take it. All right, so that's a kind of a mouthful when you think about you're preventing the next enhancement played in battle to take it. And then it may ban to a thief, or you may bounce a character in a territory. So prevent the next good enhancement played in battle to take it. You do not have to prevent it. It doesn't have to be prevented in order for it to take. So if the opponent plays a cannot be prevented card to get through the prevent, then you can still take it, provided it is in play after it, like if it puts you in special initiative or whatever, that resolves first.
Yep.
So you don't have to, it doesn't wipe out the take if it's a CBP enhancement. I think that was one of the first questions that came up with it. But this guy looks like a pretty cool card to, if blocking, prevent the next enhancement, and then you can ban to a thief, so you can ban to like the Highwayman and then draw a bunch of cards.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, I think prevent the next and banned on a big numbered character, that seems pretty good, because not only are you preventing the next, but if their battle winner doesn't deal with multiple characters, then they only get to get rid of one of them, and then they also have to have something that's CBP or CBN. So I think that's definitely a solid card.
Yeah, I think it's going to probably see a decent amount of play with Thieves when that kind of comes out and people start first putting it together. I think this one probably makes the cut from what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to bring us to Pilfer. You want to take this one, Jayden?
Yeah, so this is another little tool for Thieves. They'll get to use this 5/1 Crimson enhancement. It is territory class, so that's always fun. Get the special ability to you may negate an opponent's card this turn to draw 1. If used by a thief in battle, you may take the negated card unless it is a dominant. So this is a card that we did the math at one point, and it was during playtesting, and it was like a 5-for-1, because you got to negate something, you got to draw something, you got to take something, and it was all and it did like a couple smaller things as well.
I remember that. I remember Gabe coming on and he mentioned it, and I think he mentioned that one of the people they had playtesting brought it back to him, and they were like, "This is better than a like." They thought it was a 2-for-1 or something like that.
Yeah,
And
that was Justin who was like, who did the math on it because he probably, uh, you know, got it played against him or something like that, and he was like, trying to figure out why it felt so much worse than it actually was, or than they thought it was, I guess.
yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to recall that. Hey, I remember that story. So old man brain isn't getting to me so much right now.
There you go. So yeah, this one you can negate an opponent's card, you get to draw a card, and then you also get to take the negated card unless it's a dominant, but you only get to take it if you play it in battle. So that was, I think, the part that changed, or one of the parts, that you weren't able to take the card unless you, or I guess you were able to take the card previously, even if you hadn't played it in battle. But I do think the dominant stipulation was there, so no free woes for you. But still a very solid card. It's, at the very least, it can turn off someone's storehouse for a turn or something and draw you a card if you play it in territory. And also in battle, it can be a good negate, and then a take for you to use later.
All right, that's going to bring us to Anna the Widow, and this one was spoiled by our friend that it's on the podcast, and he was having a little bit of a guessing game, and I kind of ruined the fun by just saying what the card was. So sorry for that.
That was kind of the point of the game. So
I think the way that I decided what it was I decided what I thought it might be, like card type, and then I just started at the top of the list, and the first one that hit, I was like, yeah, that's probably it. So
fair enough.
Yeah. Find the alphabetical order, or not order, I guess, chronological, based on the numbers of the set. So,
Well, so the way that it actually happened was that, Gabe, to both Joe and I, he was like, all right, got these 4 cards, and you guys want to pick 2 of them to spoil. And so we each picked one, and then because we had so much fun with it, with the games, they were like, all right, well, you guys can do the other 2 on Monday. And so that's
nice.
I guess I shouldn't have picked Anna first, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, probably not. But oh well. So Anna the Widow, she is a dual brigade hero who is green and white and has numbers of 2 and 4. She has identifiers of nativity, prophet, and an X identifier, which equals 1 or 3 if opponent has hand advantage. So I think I don't want to speak out of pocket here, but I don't know if I recall any cards that have like a hard number, X equals a hard number, but then some other condition makes it change. I know that we have the X identifier that's dynamic and it changes, but this one is 1 or 3 if opponent has hand advantage, not number of cards in opponent's hand or anything like that, which is kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, I thought that was very clever, like a good use of it. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, well, that's like, it makes perfect sense, but it's not something that you would kind of think of, or when we think about an X thing, it's just a variable, but here it's just either it's 1 or it's 3, and that's it.
Yeah. And so the special ability is you may look at the top 3 cards of a deck, and that's any deck, a deck. So your deck, opponent's deck, teammate's deck, anything, a deck. You may underdeck all 3 of the cards that you look at, or reserve up to X evil cards, or take up to X good cards you own. So you're looking at 3 cards, then you can underdeck all 3. You can reserve up to X evil cards, or take up to X good cards you own. So if you're choosing to underdeck all 3, then you don't have any targets for the other abilities because you do them in order. So if you're underdecking, they just all get underdecked. So if they contain souls and you're trying to hide souls, you do that. Otherwise, you're choosing not to underdeck all 3. Now you can reserve up to X evil cards. which is going to be more so if you're doing it for your opponent's deck, and then or take up to X good cards you own. So you could just take either 1 or 3 if opponent has hand advantage. So Anna the Widow is actually, it seems like a pretty strong ability. Instead of look at the top whatever, and then that's based on the number of how many of this, nativity heroes you have in play, for example. You're always going to look at the top 3, and then you're always going to be able to take at least 1, or you're going to take all 3 potentially. So it's not as, like, she can come out without a big board set up and still get her look at the top 3 cards and do whatever.
Right.
Which a lot of them, like Japheth or whatever, relies on Flood Survivors or something like that.
Yeah, I like how flexible she is and having all those options, even in like a relatively simple ability. Like there's not a whole lot that's complicated about that once you kind of just read all of the words and put them together. And the other thing is you don't have to underdeck them or take anything or reserve anything. You can just leave all 3 on top right where they are if you're don't see any lost souls in there and you're happy with that, or if there are lost souls, you can underdeck them, like you were saying, and try to hide lost souls. So there's some good like flexibility and utility with that kind of ability. That was a lot of abilities.
Yeah, I think she's a pretty nifty little character that you're going to be able to put into, green splash, white, nativity. So she seems like a decent card standalone and be able to use her ability without having to force it into the nativity stuff. And she has the Prophet Identifier, which is always fun because then you can use things like 2 bears or whatever on her as potential battle winners.
Yeah, and she's got a chicken in the picture, so
Jeremy Chambers has a new favorite card.
Wonder if that's the first chicken on a redemption card.
I don't know.
That's the trivia for this week or something.
Yeah, so if you find a picture of a chicken on a redemption card that it's not Anna the Widow, send it to me. I'll get you some kind of prize. Which, speaking of, that reminds me that I owe somebody a prize for guessing the special guest that I did.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So before I finish this episode, I'm putting it on you to remind me to pick a winner for that.
Do you already have the winner, or are you like?
I don't. Oh,
okay.
So I think it was between 2 people I was debating on.
Gotcha.
So I'll have to touch up on that.
Right.
But the next card is going to be Flight into Egypt. This is going to be a dual brigade good enhancement, and it is the numbers of 4 and 2, and the brigades on it are silver and white, and it is nativity as an identifier. The star ability on it says protect good nativity cards from harm until end of turn, which is pretty useful, especially considering you can use the star dominant in battle to boom, protect until end of turn or something like that. But then the special ability, the regular ability, is if opponent has hand advantage, negate and reserve an evil card, which is pretty solid. If opponent has hand advantage, which you're wanting them to with nativity, you get to negate and reserve an evil card. So the broad targeting of an evil card being, Fortress. Technically, I guess it could be a dominant if they have an evil 3 woes. It could be an evil character, evil enhancement that's placed. Kind of a cool card, especially when the fact that if you're playing it with nativity, you get to use that star ability potentially multiple times in the game. So I think it's a pretty decent card for nativity.
Yeah, for sure. And we're kind of seeing, like, just with these first 2 cards, a little bit of overlap, it seems, with the kind of NT Gold theme of reserving cards instead of doing anything else with them, like discarding them or whatever. So I think that's kind of cool to see that spilling over into other themes and making some use of that kind of unique ability that hasn't been touched on a whole lot until this set.
Yeah, and with the green on Anna that kind of reserves evil cards, I guess they're trying to help you out with the force delivered play. So there is that.
Yep, exactly.
But if you want to take the next card, mostly because I didn't want to have to try to pronounce it. So
I kind of wondered if that's if
yeah,
what
that's
you
why
were
I did the
planning
double
here.
and then
Yep.
left you with that one.
So the next one here is the one that I spoiled today. It's called Nunc Dimittis. That's my best Latin there. I believe that's Latin.
We should just take the N off of the beginning and just be like Unc Demitis. Like how people call their uncle my Unc.
Uh-huh. Yep. This is Uncle Dimittis. So this one, I guess if you guys were paying attention to the spoiler channel earlier today, you already know all of the features of it, like how many words are in the star ability, and by today I mean yesterday. um, but I'll still read them off for you guys. So the numbers are 2, 3. It is a tri-brigade enhancement. It is clay, green, and white. It involves music, so you can grab it with your music leader and all that other, David's harp, that kind of stuff. And then it's also a nativity enhancement. It is the song of Simeon, which I won't get into. That's getting ahead of ourselves here, I guess. The star ability is negate lost souls until end of turn, and the enhancement ability, a special ability, is discard an evil card. You may top deck a good card from deck or take it if opponent has hand advantage. So, of course, my first thought is, ooh, top deck a good card. You can use that with Jeshua. Good application there. You could also use the whole hand advantage thing that Nativity is trying to do and just take a card from your deck. So this is kind of a hark back a little bit to like old school search, where you're playing a tutor that's not territory class, which is kind of cool, but you also get the benefit of discarding an evil card. So it could be an evil character, could be uh, an evil woes, could be an evil fortress, and then you get to go grab something from your deck or top deck it if you have hand advantage, or I guess more specifically if your opponent does not have hand advantage.
Yeah, so when you're playing into your opponent's undesirables and you know they're about to give it to you, instead of just going into battle resolution, you play your Star of Bethlehem, and then you activate the star here to negate lost souls until end of turn, so they can't
There
do
you
that
go.
on you. So after you get the use and it's in your discard pile, you get another use out of it. So that's a pretty cool card, and
Oh yeah.
I think the involves music and nativity there make it to where I don't know how many nativity tutors we've seen so far, but I think we've seen a couple. But the involves music means it's going to be able to be searched out. So definitely going to be a card that's easy to get to. I think being a star card with Emmaus Road, it's three pretty popular brigades. Clay just got all kinds of searching cards. It's a gospel enhancement, so getting to this card is not going to be a problem.
Oh yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how much use it gets based on what all is available in the, I guess, enhancement spread of nativity cards versus, just using some that necessarily are not necessarily nativity that are already in the card pool. So I guess interested to see how much use this one gets, because I think it is a solid card. It has utility with nativity and just being able to be searched so many ways. Like if it's in your deck, you can get it basically at will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those cards that it's definitely going to fit the best in nativity because you're already kind of leaning into that hand advantage thing. But the brigades make it splashable enough where, unlike Flight into Egypt, it does things other than the hand advantage stuff, and you can splash it into with other brigades, and it's might see more use among other decks than just nativity. Also, notably, it's the first non-Tissot art that we've spoiled from GOC tonight.
Really, look at you
Yep.
paying attention here. And then two of the Israel's Deliverance were also Tissot art.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That'll bring us to Simeon the Devout, and this guy is dual brigade good hero. Obviously, he is 4 and 5 on the numbers. Green and white are the brigades. He is nativity and profit on his identifiers. And let me tell you about this ability. May ban to a New Testament prophet, or if opponent has hand advantage, they must underdeck an evil card from hand. Cannot be prevented. So I don't know if this works as well as it does in my head, but I feel like, what is the card that does it? The cherubim that bans to a green prophet or whatever. I feel like that card's going to get paired with this, at least early on. Someone's going to play angels and just tag this guy on as a underdeck an evil card from hand on top of that. And potentially with, I think it's Gabriel that still discards an evil card from the deck. So I think this guy's going to get used, and he has the cool modifier of cannot be prevented. So he's going to work through some things. It's a pretty cool card that I would assume, especially in like booster draft when we do that, just if opponent has hand advantage and you're trying to have them have a hand advantage with nativity, underdeck an evil card from hand. It's so good to be able to get evil cards out of the opponent's hand, and you can pair that up with, depending on what brigade you're in, you can use the enhancements that you have that get cards out of the opponent's hand. Probably put enough of those abilities together to wipe a hand of battle resources.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of a Jehu hand control theme that's spilling a little bit over into the New Testament here.
I think Simeon's a pretty solid card. And if you're keeping up at home, he can ban to a New Testament prophet. And Anna the Widow, for example, is a New Testament prophet. So
there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, just like, so I guess the first Simeon was meek. The warrior Simeon just banded to any good prophet. And then the disciples Simeon banded to a New Testament prophet. So he's kind of going back to the old school days of being able to band to a prophet. They kept that around.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. So I guess that will finish up our spoiler section, and that'll bring us to the main conversation that we're going to have. And we've been planning this for weeks, man. Like, we put so much thought into this. We put a lot of thought into it. Like when I told Jayden that we could talk about this, at 11:30 tonight or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know, 10:30, whatever time it was. Time is just running together. So we haven't put that much thought into it, but we thought it was a great topic to share because it's one of the categories at Nationals for you to play, but then it's also in the side events, and that is teams. So It's something that I enjoy more than I thought I would. I definitely enjoy it more than multiplayer. So that is key. But teams, and so we're just going to kind of talk about teams and how it differs from what people might be used to with Type 1, Type 2, and talk about that if you have not played teams so that you kind of have an idea, and, it's just on record for you to have some information on it if it's a category that you want to try playing. So, Jayden, tell us about teams and how different is it from Type 1 in your expert opinion?
Yeah, so I mean, for one thing, it's they're Type 1 these days, or since in this past season, I guess now only has officially been a 2-player category or offered as a 2-player, and so now teams kind of is the only official multiplayer format. So you are playing with other players, but it is a little bit like a 2-player game because it's you and someone else against 2 other players that are on a team. So hence the name. So it's definitely a slower game in the sense of like it takes a little bit longer to figure things out because you kind of got to coordinate with your teammate. And it is kind of fun because there is table talk. Like you can say whatever you want as long as it's in English, I guess. Like that's actually a rule that you and your opponent can't be speaking a different language, or I guess you and your teammate can't be speaking a different language. But you can just be like, all right, I've got these are my options to block. Is this, going to work, or like, do you have something better? Or you can also, just try to hide your interactions by kind of like having some synergy or something with your teammate. Like, I've been teaming up with Justin for a number of years, and so we kind of just have, an understanding of a few things, and it's a lot of fun to try out, and then to get experience in. Like, I think all throughout, it's a good time.
Yeah, you mentioned the table talk, and I was not aware there was table talk because I had only played teams a couple of times before nationals last year, and we sit down first pairing, me and Jeremy, after staying up all night building our deck. Again, John, I know, don't build it the night before. Would you stop? Get off my back, man. I just feel the weight of his judgment on me. But anyway, so me and Jeremy,
don't worry about it.
me and Jeremy built our deck, and we took a version of like King Noah into teams, and we thought we were going to do okay, but didn't expect to win or anything, just because we put last minute thought into it. But of course, we pair up with you and John early in the first round, and proceed to get beat 5-0. But you guys opened up, and I think it was like off the star ability. You were like, "Do you need a hero? Do you have a hero? Do you have?" And then one of you used like Emmaus Road to look at a hand and just start calling out the cards, and I'm like, "Whoa, you can't do that." Turns out you can.
Yep.
And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
so
I enjoy that aspect for sure.
So it's kind of a like you assume that there's no, because most card games, even if you're playing teams, like I've known some people that when it comes to card games that are in teams, and there's one game in particular that you split off into teams and you count books, and if you talk across the table, you might get ran out of the game, and that's spades. I don't know how popular that is in the rest of the country, but here where I'm at, you get together, you play spades, and if you're playing spades and you talk across the table, then boom, it's like a cardinal sin you've broken. So like I had that thought, and then you guys just start rattling off, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be a long game. And then of course I had the complete chance to nerf John's play on the first turn by playing Destruction of New Houston and getting rid of his hidden treasures, but I didn't do it because I was holding it for a more opportune time that I never saw, because you guys outpaced us.
Definitely isn't a good time.
Yeah, well, so that was my experience of learning that you can talk across the table, and in fact, the best players do it.
Yeah. And that, I think your destruction play is probably a good point to make about teams, of like, you really don't want to, like, you don't really have to pace yourself as much as in type 1, in terms of like, waiting for an opportune moment for something. Like if they're doing something that seems good and you have a way to disrupt it, you should take the opportunity to do it then, because teams games tend to take longer, like I said, and so you don't get, you're not going to get as many turns as you will in a type 1 game.
Definitely. You can just go ahead and kiss turn 3 goodbye. If you don't win on the first 2 turns, homie, you've lost. You've lost, or you've timed out.
Right.
So, because really, and this is the next question we have here, is our next point to make is, it's almost like you're already on turn 3 when turn 2 comes around, and when you're on turn 1, you're really on turn 2, because teams has something called intro prep, which is where you draw your 8 cards, and everyone gets to go around and play things like territory class. I think you can even play dominance. What are the limitations in the intro prep, and then how do you, as a seasoned teams player, how do you try to leverage that into, having a strong turn 1 once the battles start happening?
So, I mean, there is literally no difference between intro prep and your regular prep phase. So, anything that you could do in your regular prep phase, you can do in intro prep. You can put down any characters, you can activate an artifact, you can put down sites and occupy them, you can put down fortresses and all that, play territory class enhancements. So, really, what people try to do in intro prep is just kind of try to establish counters is a big thing. You can put down heroes like if your teammate's going first, and you've got some synergy on your offense with like banding or something. Like I've got my Anna the Widow, and John's going first, and you've got your Simeon, and you can tell me in your opening hand like, oh hey, I've got Simeon, and so I'll be like, oh okay, I'll put down Anna so that you can band to her on your when you take the first turn. So it's just kind of doing a little bit of planning with your teammates, setting up things like counters, and then also getting out cards that typically don't get any value on turn one in type one. So like storehouse or other upkeep trigger cards, you can get those out, and then as soon as you actually start, like you're going into your first turn that you'll be able to attack, you've got those triggers that you can use. So you can, well, I guess you can't use storehouse because it's still the first round for reserve access, but you know what I was getting at.
Yeah. So, what are, I guess, there's deck building rules that, you know, basically make the two decks operate as one deck in terms of unique cards. So, you get 7 souls at minimum, just like in a standard 50 card deck. 7 souls in both decks, but you can't duplicate souls because souls are unique cards. And then dominants are the same, they're all unique. So you have to run a different 7 souls, a different 7 dominants. So you end up in the game having a more widespread, like you have to worry about someone having pretty much every one of the top, at least the top 10 dominants, and then maybe they, pick a couple of different fringe dominants or whatever. But you're going to see mayhem. It's not a if they're running shipwreck. One of the two decks will have the shipwreck in it, and then you have to plan for, or not necessarily plan, but just be aware as the game unfolds that more dominants are at play than just the 7 that you have to worry about when you're playing a standard, 2-player game in Type 1. And I don't really know about Type 2 because that's your squeeze, not mine. But I mean that's something that really does take a little bit more, I guess, experience playing, because it's something that like I picked up on as we played and as we've played teams since or whatnot. Me and Jeremy, that you just have to be. Somebody's got Angel of the Lord. They didn't cut Angel of the Lord and Christian Martyr, which in most decks now you're using one or the other, and some decks aren't using either, but you're going to see them in teams. And souls are the same way. You're going to see more souls, which also makes the decision to play because you share Land of Bondage. I guess it makes deciding to go the Old Testament Unity or New Testament Unity, or, not playing Unity either way and just kind of having the best of both, but, cutting out like Covet or what's the New Testament card that you have?
Undesirables.
And then obviously we're picking up, I think there's another one with one of the ones in phase 2 is going to be Unity as well.
Defiled.
Oh, okay. So maybe right now you're just picking between Covet and Undesirables, but I mean that's still a decision you have to make, and then you have to make sure that you don't break Unity from either deck. So you have to keep that in mind.
So actually, and this will kind of maybe get into, or so the way it works with Unity is that it's only cards that you own and control. So cards that your teammate has in your territory that's shared among you, so Lost Souls primarily, are the Unity only counts your cards. So generally the strategy, I guess, or kind of what you want to do when you're building your deck is one of you has OT Unity, so you can utilize Covet and all that. and then one of you has NT unities that you can now utilize the undesirables and the new ones that are coming out in phase 2 as well.
And see, this is why we got second at nationals last year, not first. I still don't know the rules, so that's why an episode like this might be important for someone that's wanting to try out teams. I like how you let me go on that whole spiel and like stumble through it, and you're like, "Yeah, actually, everything you said, bro, wrong."
You were just on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt. I'm a Minnesotan. We don't interrupt up here.
Well, we do down here. I tell you that. Have you met Jay?
Now that he's moved up to the Midwest, maybe we'll see what happens there. But on a similar note, I guess the other cards that you share, so there's kind of a common part of your territory. So that would be your land of bondage, and then also fortresses and dominance are shared. So for dominance, that means that your glory of the Lord is going to be shared. Which, I mean, the reason that they did that was because glory of the Lord places on fortresses. At least I think that was kind of the main reasoning behind it. So that's technically in both players' territory. And then also it means that your 3 woes, once you place it in your territory, that's actually active for both players. So on my upkeep, I'm going to be able to negate something for 1 round. And then on my teammates' upkeep, they will also be able to negate something for 1 round. Now, what I'm not sure, at one point it was where it would actually go for the entire round, so you would actually have a 3 woes that was targeting 2 different things, and I believe that is still the case, because the precedence with Noah's wife, where she can kind of be targeting multiple things at a time once you place multiple flood survivors down or put them in play. For some reason, I'm thinking that might have changed, but I don't think that's the case.
All right, it's 12:43. Call Marcus. I'm kidding. Let's not bother Marcus. But
okay.
yeah.
I'll put my phone back. No,
I think honestly, like I think I recall at some point it coming up and being mentioned that if you choose a new target, then it stops the previous target and just. But each player can choose a new target on their turn, so they can update it as necessary for their setup.
That's possible. Yeah, I just couldn't think of why the Noah's wife precedence, so to speak, would not apply. Maybe she has a similar thing now where she can only target 1 card at a time. Like if you play another flood survivor, then she's only negating that.
I think she still targets multiple, but like her clause has. If you put a flood survivor in play from hand, so I guess because you can do that multiple times, maybe I don't know. This is a tangent that I am not prepared to have an answer for.
all right. Let's move on to fortresses. And so they're also shared, which means that storehouse protects both teammates' hands and decks, and
they are also confusing.
Yeah, there are also I think a good thing to think about when you're building your deck, because you don't want to have like the same fortress in both decks, because you can only have 1 unique fortress in play at a time, and so that'll be between both you and your teammate. And I think that was something that was established pretty much right away in teams. That was like, okay, doubling up on fortresses is maybe not the best thing. I don't know that it would have been too bad, but I think it's kind of a cool
double Throne of David. That'd probably be pretty bad.
Well, I mean, the thing is that you still get double only from 1 copy by sharing them. So I don't know why exactly they're unique, but I think it's a cool aspect of teams that, like, you have this at least one other thing that's shared. I guess you do share sites as soon as they're occupied. So you
Yeah.
because you share a land of bondage, you share only occupied sites because when they're not occupied, they're not in your land of bondage. Maybe
E-
a surprise to some people, but
Even though everyone puts them in their land of bondage, they are just in territory unless occupied.
right.
Another thing is artifacts. Artifacts are unique to each player, but if you have an artifact that can be placed on a shared card, so a
Mm,
fortress that is shared by each player, and you put an artifact in, then both players can get the benefit from said artifact. So, Book of the Law in Solomon's Temple, for example, both players can trigger that.
right.
Things
Yeah,
like
but
that.
if you activate Book of the Law in Solomon's Temple, I can't activate my own Book of the Law in my artifact pile because then I would have two artifacts in place. So you kind of have to, um, be aware of that as well. That you're not like, oh shoot, like now I can't activate my own, and so then we don't, or we only have one copy, and it's more vulnerable, I guess. Or whereas having the two individual ones might be better, but
Yeah, but you could also put it face down, right? Even while it's in play, you can still put it face down,
oh
even
yeah,
though
yeah, yeah,
you already control one, so it'll be there if you need it.
right,
Um,
yep.
Also, I guess that means that since sites are not shared, um, since sites are not shared, they're in territory. You can only put souls in regular sites, right? You can't put a soul in like what's the one I'm thinking of? Ends of the Earth, something like that.
You can put a lost soul in it. I don't know why you ever would, but you can. I
Well,
guess
to
maybe to get
so
a
the
lost
both
soul, but
so both opponents can or both players can use it because you don't share the site unless it's occupied.
right.
So,
But you can't add a site to battle if it's occupied.
oh, okay. See, I figured there was some kind of stop there.
Yeah.
So I think that's most of the kind of shared cards that kind of make things convoluted a little bit. And these are things that as you play the format, like I'm still learning the format or whatever. I wouldn't say that I'm great at it, but I do
Hmm.
enjoy playing it. And I think each time you play, you learn something that you didn't know before. You're getting better at, recognizing things a little bit quicker and how things interact. And these cards interact with you having multiple opponents and a teammate. I guess let me ask you, how do like when me and Jeremy put our decks together? Obviously, we kind of, I guess, the dominant and lost soul package for one player might be different than it is for the other player as far as like the strategy. So if you want your cards that are like your blocking enhancements, or I'm sorry, blocking dominance, you might want those with the deck that has the weaker defense, something like that. So how do you align the decks within a team, and then is there a primary purpose for one deck versus the other? So like you have one deck that's better at rescuing than one that's better at blocking, something like that.
So I think that, I mean, that was kind of a thing that people, I think, really early on into teams, like I guess people who are brand new to teams will, especially will think like, okay, I'll have a really big defense and you'll have a really big offense. Like we'll just kind of split it up that way, and it seems kind of it seems reasonable from the outset, or just kind of as a theory. But in practice, it doesn't actually work out all that well because the defensive deck might be too slow, and it just can't keep up with both opponents, and so you have to really maximize your opportunity to rescue twice in every time around the table, because the way that since you and your teammate are both working toward the same goal of five lost souls, theoretically the turn or the game can end on the first turn of the second round. So if you rescue, then they go, then I rescue, and then they go, then you rescue again, and then we play the big two, then we're up to five. And so you really want to make sure that both decks are competent, I guess, capable of having good rescues. And I don't think that splitting up the dominance to like, putting your blocking ones in the deck with the weaker defense necessarily is always the right call, because um, I mean, for one, you can kind of dom block for your teammate, or I guess the way that blocking works in general in teams is that you as a team collectively decide who's going to block any given rescue attempt. So I think that in general, most people will have, basically a normal type 1 deck that has kind of the lost souls and the dominance, and maybe a few of the utility cards adjusted for being in a team. So like, if you run Storehouse in your deck, you only need one teammate to run Storehouse, or like, so if you're um, really want to synergize your decks, then you might look at those kind of things. It doesn't necessarily, like, this isn't to scare anyone from playing teams at a competitive level with decks that aren't necessarily synergized. Like, two basic or like unique type 1 decks where you just swap out the Lost Souls and Dominance to make the decks legal is perfectly reasonable and can do well. But I think once you really kind of focus on how your decks work well together, like I mentioned banding earlier, like, if I have heroes that you can band to and we really can utilize each other's offense to maximize our both of our rescues. Like, that was the big thing with the Hidden Throne that John and I were using, is we're really capitalizing on, I can band to his Abigail and then to my David, and then get the drawing out. We can, if we draw kind of both halves of our offense, then we each have each other's, or we each have the whole offense. And so that's really how where the strategy comes in, with kind of the decks in general. And then with dominance, I'd say generally what people will do is split up the good dominance and the evil dominance for the most part, because then the person with the good dominance, they can use their second coming in a pinch to get one of their other dominance that they might need. And then they can also use cards like Woman with Child, or what's the new one? Is it the Annunciation that lets you search for a good dominant? It's in phase 2, and so using cards like that, you can give yourself some variety of options. And then similarly on defense, if one of us is using Wages of Sin, then you can use do the evil dominance, like the Shipwreck and Christian Martyr and Chronicles, have those targets for or for wages. And so kind of like looking at those, I think, are kind of the main ways to synergize your decks between teams, or I guess within a team.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I guess to clarify something you mentioned, getting the 2 free ones there or whatever in a previous bit. I guess explicitly this should be said. It should go without saying, just because we said that at the top of this, that the decks basically, you're putting them together, but they're still operating almost like a single deck, in that you don't duplicate unique cards or whatever. But you cannot have Son of God and Chariot of Fire. So one player can't have Chariot of Fire and the other one have Son of God. And then you can't have Second Coming and New Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pick whichever 2 of the free ones. So there is only ever going to be 2 free ones, unless you're doing something with Clay and getting Eternal Inheritance. I guess both players could still play that, something like that. But beyond that, as far as dominance go, you're using Son of God or Chariot of Fire, and then the Second Coming or New Jerusalem.
Right.
So just to put that explicitly on the record there. Let me ask you, what, because like we took kind of the deck that I wanted to play in Type 1 last year, but didn't get to because I was afraid of how it would be hurt and hampered by all of the counters to Love at First Sight. So I ended up not playing it for Type 1, but we used that to kind of build out our Type 2 deck. Or not Type 2, See, don't get excited. I'm not playing Type 2. Teams decks.
You're just thinking into the future. Like, oh, I'm gonna build a Type 2 deck at some point.
In our teams deck, we use the basic premise of King Noah and using that with mostly Philistine defense, but trying to trigger Goshen by having a meat come in at the end of a band, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So since I have limited, like, that's my main thing, and then just things that we put together for this season so far, which I don't really want to share because I'm trying to win. But what overall strategies are viable in teams, or what has been viable throughout the years that you've played teams?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, the most success I've had in teams has come using the Hidden Throne deck that John and I used last year. Justin and I took first with that in 2019 as well. And it's, I think, just decks like that are, like I mentioned, like the banding part that really just like work together once one of you is part of the offense, which, I think that's, um, that gives you like the rest of the offense. And I think that's really like how you can maximize your potential in teams. Decks that aren't quite as centered, like they're like King Noah. I guess I feel like there's a little bit of, you're just trying to do your thing, and then your teammates trying to do their thing at the same time. Even if they're the same thing, there's not a whole lot that overlaps. Although I guess maybe like Goshen, because you guys
Throwing
share
shots,
that.
bro, man. It was my first time.
I'm just
Golly. But yeah,
offering advice. This is constructive criticism.
yes, definitely. Like, I understand because we only set up I think we played 4 rounds for teams, and we only set up King Noah for either one of us in 2 games. Now, the one game that we set it up early, like I think I had it on the first rescue. Like, I mean, it just walked in for every soul. And I think we won that game 5-0 against Emmanuel and John Michalesian. And then I think we pulled it off again against Rob and his brother, Rob and Dave Smith. Maybe it wasn't that, and it was against the round 4 pairing. But yeah, definitely felt like there was, I don't know how much Jeremy's played teams, but like that was like the second time I played teams. I think maybe third time ever. And so, I mean, I was a complete fish out of water, but I definitely felt the struggle of like, all right, well, I have this and I'm trying to do this. But when we played you guys, the way that you had cards, so you had, what was the site that you guys occupied and was able to double up on?
Treacherous Land.
Treacherous Land. And
Yeah,
so
I guess we should have talked about or had a thing for staples and teams, and that's definitely one of them.
well, we can hit that in just a moment then before we wrap up. But
All right.
I definitely felt like it was almost like I was on an island, Jeremy was on an island, and we were trying to pair together stuff from our own deck to make rescue attempts or to make blocks, and we weren't really using things that the other player was putting down in territory. So definitely understand, and you're 100% right that we were doing our own thing, just doing the same own thing.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's good to note that, banding isn't the only way to do it. There are cards that, like, Susanna, she's got an X identifier that's the number of NT females in play, or NT female heroes in play. So if you and your teammate are both playing, NT female offense, then your Susanna is going to get benefit from that, which, obviously that's not a huge benefit, or it's not like a game swinging thing, but that's just kind of an example. Also, like the Cloud Joseph that protects Joseph, Goshen, or I think it's Goshen, Storehouse, and other sons of Jacob. So you can. That was one of the things that Justin and I tried. I think it was 2018 when we were doing a Zebulon offense. I guess like Zebulon and Benjamin, and you can have mine or like one of our Joseph down, and he's protecting our my teammates, Zebulon and Benjamin as well. So things like that you can just kind of look for that affect both, and like Goshen, I was saying before, fortresses that can help both of your offenses, get those things out early, and help to uh, boost your teammates' offense as well as yours.
Right. So I guess now we'll kind of add this question in. What are team staples? So you mentioned that one. I know that one was popular. I assume that cards that kind of give a similar benefit would be just things that can give card advantage to both players from the opponent doing something. Are there any more like that? And then I guess what other staples are there that you know go in pretty much every team's deck?
Yeah, I guess I maybe should have thought about this before I said that it should be like a topic, but so
Off the dome.
definitely treacherous land, because like we talked about how there are so many dominants being played, and there, it's kind of like a two-player game but with 14 dominants in a way. And so treacherous land is not only going to trigger off of all of the multi-brigade good cards that people are playing these days, but also all of those dominants, and the dominants are going to be really what I think is the main payoff. And then once you occupy treacherous land, because it's a site, then it's shared and it triggers for both you and your teammate. And sites are also generic, so I can have treacherous land and occupy it, and you can have treacherous land and occupy it. And once you do that, then we're both drawing two for every dominant our opponent plays, and every um, multi-brigade card they play in battle, or a good card they play in battle. So I think cards like that are, um, yeah, definitely staples. Bethlehem is another similar effect. If you play it as a fortress, it's going to be shared by you and your teammate, and so you can both draw off of that, or one of you can reserve a hero to negate that card, and then um, the other get the draw or something like that. That one is unique though, so you don't get it with both decks. Um, but I think that, yeah, look for those kind of effects. The other cards are, I mean, probably arguably staples in Type 1 two-player. Most of them kind of translate over. So, um, your, of course, your dominance, which you don't really have to have all the slots for. Um, cards like Delivered to help you set up in your intro prep and that kind of stuff can be very helpful. And then also Sheol. Uh, I guess we talked about Unity with Lost Souls. It's kind of the same with other stuff that's shared. So like Sheol has Unity evil characters that share a brigade. As long as all of my evil characters share a brigade, I can use Sheol. Um, and as long as all of your evil characters share a brigade, you can use Sheol. So we can both trigger Sheol when one of our opponent searches, unless we're in battle with them, because then I think it's only the player that you're is opposing you in battle is your opponent. Um, but yeah, both getting to underdeck Lost Souls, like, it might seem a little strange or like not quite as powerful, because um, you've got 14 Lost Souls between the two decks, and it's a pretty fast format, so the Lost Souls are going to be out. But if you're getting two underdecks per search, then you'd be surprised how quickly the Lost Souls can disappear. And I think it's important to note with the limit 4 rule, um,
See, I was
that
going to put you on the
counts
spot and ask you about it.
that counts players or individually. So I can use it. I can use Sheol 4 times in a turn, and you can use Sheol 4 times in a turn if we're on a team.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Sheol getting underdeck 2 Lost Souls per search. You also keep in mind that depending on what brigades, and I know that site access is they're going to have site access for the most part, but you're going to at least be putting the ones in treacherous land, so to get the sites to be shared. So you potentially have those put in sites that maybe they have to work around and rescue with a hero that they wouldn't normally do, and then you get to. So I think that came up at one point in a team's game, at some point down the line that I've played, to where like they were able to put up all the ones except for the ones in sights, and it's like, darn, now I've got to go in with this guy that can get to it.
So you're saying you weren't playing King Noah?
I guess not at this time.
Mr. Site Access himself.
Yeah.
So one other staple that I think is worth bringing up for teams
is Noah.
Sure, yeah. I mean, he's basically a staple in Type 1-2 player these days, so maybe he fits. But choose the blocker heroes. So I mentioned before that you and your teammate get to decide between yourselves who gets to block when your opponent attacks. That option is taken away when one of you is forced to block. So if I play the first sacrifice and look at one of my opponent's hands and they've got a whole bunch of defense, and then maybe something else looks at the other opponent's hand, or I'm not as scared as of what they might have, I can go out with my Abigail and choose the player, one of their evil characters that doesn't have quite as much defense to block, and now they're locked into the battle, so they are the ones who will have to defend. So I think that's, I would definitely say that choose the blocker heroes are a staple. That's part of what made Hidden Throne so good, was with Elijah, and I think we were running Azahel. I don't think we were running Ehud, but having those available, which also, I guess, probably implies that wall of protection and or other ways to protect your evil characters should also be staples in teams.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of the way that we knew that we had lost when you guys 5-0'd us in round 1 of Nationals last year. When you were able to, I think you did the falling away play, but then you gave us a fool, and then, or something like that. Basically, we were having to block without blocking, or you guys on one of your blocks used like I don't remember what it was, but we very rarely got to choose who we were blocking with, or have any enhancements that we had that paired up with the brigade just in general. So like it was mostly just, all right, you beat us by the numbers, here's a soul, and just do that right over and over until you've like bludgeoned our pride away. So
that was actually the goal of the deck. It was not necessarily to win, but just to make sure that John and Jeremy didn't have any pride left by the end of the game.
Yeah, well, it worked. It worked. So I guess we'll get ready to wrap it up. That's just kind of, I guess, what I hope is kind of an in-depth overview of what Teams is as a format for people that have not played it yet and maybe would be interested in it but kind of want to. I feel like there's a lot of players before they try out some of these other formats, they like to have an idea of them, like a tangible like idea of this is what to expect, versus just you don't know what to expect, just get in there and try it. Like people like to know how things are going to go, or at least have an idea, so that you don't sit down and then people start telling their teammate what's in your hand and you not know that that's something you can do.
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully this has been insightful for people that are new to Teams or have not tried it out at all yet. So
I've got one more thing that I just thought of that relates to the like lost souls being shared. That might be a little confusing to people, and is certainly, it certainly is confusing. So I'll just take a minute to explain here. The lost souls that are shared and that have triggered abilities when they are drawn and come into play, that kind of stuff, most of the time will work for both players. So especially if put in territory. So like my, if I draw exiles, both players or both teammates are going to be able to activate that ability. and they can do different modes of it as well. So you kind of have your own instance of the ability on Lost Souls like that. Same sort of thing with Lost Souls that are if drawn, because they were drawn, maybe not necessarily by you, but they were drawn. And the big exception, I guess, so an example of that would be the Prosperity Lost Soul. It's just if drawn, you can discard a card from it to draw 2. So both you and your teammate would be able to do that. A big exception to kind of that idea is the Lawless, which says if you draw this card. So that one, you really just have to pay attention to the wording on the cards. I think Lawless is really the only weird one, but it's only works for the player who drew the card. They're the only ones who get to activate the ability. Other Lost Souls that have ongoing abilities, like Crowds, that's going to work for both you and your teammate. Same thing with Humble. Then also Distressed is kind of a weird one, because you might think like it says negate characters in other territories. Well, if it's in my territory, would that negate characters in my teammate's territory? That was something that there was confusion on for a while, and I think it was the other way for a bit, but the way that it works currently is other territories counts only the territories that Distressed is not in. So if you have Distressed, it does not negate your teammates' characters and territory because it's also in their territory.
Yeah, I remember that one coming up at Nationals. Let me ask you, just since you brought up souls that kind of have intricate like layering and how they work for each player and how they might not. How does imitate work? Does each player get to change the ability of that in their upkeep? I kind of assume they would.
As soon as you started talking, or as soon as you said like souls with intricate abilities, I was like, oh, he's going to ask about imitate, isn't he?
At least I'm following into the right mindset, trying to get in the mindset of a previous national champion and team. I'm asking the right questions.
There you go. Yep. So that one, I guess I assume it would.
Now you can go ahead and call Marcus.
All right, we've got that one and Three Woes, which I assume they work the same way because they're both upkeep triggers that are shared. And so on my upkeep, I would get to copy the special ability of another New Testament Lost Soul for 1 round. And so that does like target another Lost Soul. So as soon as it's your turn, the question is, does it change my target to like, so I guess, is it the player targeting or is it the card targeting? If the cards, the card you would think could only have one target, but the players might be able to have their own targets. So I'm not actually positive how that works based on our unsureness of how Three Woes works.
Okay, so as my buddy Brad would say when he's on the podcast, everyone's got homework, all right? We, as a community, have homework. We've got to figure out how Three Woes and similar abilities, which is also on Imitate, each upkeep, you may, and now they're shared, so both players can do that. Figure out how they're ruled officially. So at some point we'll circle back and I'll provide the answer. Maybe on next week's podcast I'll find the answer, or I'm sure the conversation will start at some point in the Discord. Now that this is going to be on the podcast.
So your homework is that and chicken pictures.
Yes, chicken pictures.
Don't forget.
Everyone's got the homework to find the first ever chicken picture, and if it is not Anna the Elder, I will have a prize for you, which, that brings me back to the prize that I owe someone. So I am pulling this up right now. So I appreciate
that's what I'm counting as your reminder.
Nice. All right, so I am ready to announce the winner, and I couldn't choose one. I chose two. All right. We've got Joe Schaefer for his comment that the special guest would be Jayden Alstad, which just a week late, right? Announcing that Jeshua does not, in fact, belong in every deck. So
I would never say such a thing.
Yeah.
But then that was a good fake one, Joe. That was good.
But then a good follow up, additional fake one is Rob Smith said, Jayden announcing some things actually don't seem good. Seems good. So for those two, I am going to give you an award. And the award is going to be that you can pick any pack of cards. I will send you a booster pack of any cards that are currently available from Covenant Games, which is the sponsor for the podcast. So I got to get my sealed product from those guys. So any packs that they have in stock, tell me what pack you want, and I will send you a pack of redemption cards for just throwing out a fun little, stab at a funny guest sham. That's not bad. And if I were you, I'd be smart about it and get LOC super packs. But that's just me.
I'd say that seems pretty good.
So you guys, let me know which cards you want. That's Rob Smith, Joe Schaefer. Let me know. Reach out to me, send me a message, send me your address, and I will get those ordered from Covenant Games. So we'll get ready to wrap up the podcast here. Want to thank you, Jayden, for coming on and sharing some of your wisdom about how not to lose at nationals in teams.
Yeah, we got to get people ready to beat Josh at nationals.
Yeah, well,
and I guess John and Jeremy, I don't know, maybe, and
John and Ron, maybe, who knows?
Oh yeah, maybe. Well, thanks for having me, John. It was a good time.
Yep, and I guess just a quick reminder again. You got 30 days. Nationals will be here in 30 days, so make sure you pre-register, and you do have the incentive that is going to be given out to you to get your first side event paid for if you register before the 15th of July. So make sure that you guys do that if you're coming. And I guess all aboard the hype train. Let's keep going.
Choo-choo. Right? Wait, no, you got to play the Derek one. Sorry.
Choo-choo. Here comes that hype train again.
There we go. All right. Talk to you guys later. Peace. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in and giving it a listen. I want to thank Jayden for coming on and really working with me to help make an episode happen here last minute. Life has really caught up with me, so I want to thank him for helping make this happen. I want to thank you guys for listening like you do every week. And make sure you do your homework. First person to find a redemption card with a chicken that came before Anna the Elder, I've got a pack of whatever set that you want. So do that. Remember to register for nationals, and we'll see you next week. Peace.